Psychology says the primary difference between high achievers and everyone else isn't talent. Luck or background, it's their thinking. Successful people aren't just working harder. They are operating from a fundamentally different psychological framework. Their minds are trained to interpret the world, their actions, and their potential in a way that generates extraordinary results. 1. They prioritize long-term vision. Successful people consistently sacrifice short-term comfort for a long-term goal. They skip the late-night Netflix binge to wake up early for a workout. They invest money into a business instead of buying a luxury car. And they spend weekends studying a new skill instead of going out. Psychology calls this delayed gratification. By practicing this, their brain develops stronger prefrontal cortex control over the limbic system, which governs impulse. What looks like extreme self-discipline is actually a trained psychological muscle for prioritizing future rewards over immediate pleasure. 2. They cultivate a growth mindset. Successful people believe their abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. When faced with a complex problem, they don't say, "I'm not smart enough." They ask, "What do I need to learn to solve this?" They see criticism as valuable feedback, not a personal attack, and are inspired by the success of others. Psychology calls this a growth mindset. This belief system activates different neural pathways than a fixed mindset, fostering learning and resilience by releasing dopamine in response to challenges, not just rewards. They're not just born confident. They're conditioned to see potential in every effort. 3. They engage in deliberate practice. Successful people don't just put in the hours. They focus on intentional, highly structured practice. An aspiring musician doesn't just play songs. They isolate and repeat the most difficult chords. A top salesperson doesn't just make calls. They record and analyze their pitch, identifying specific areas for improvement. Psychology calls this deliberate practice. This process rewires their brain for mastery through neuroplasticity, creating thicker myelin sheaths around relevant neural circuits, which speeds up signal transmission. What appears as effortless genius is actually thousands of hours of targeted psychological and neurological refinement. 4. They master emotional intelligence. High achievers understand and manage their own emotions while accurately perceiving the emotions of others. They can recognize when they feel frustrated and pause before reacting. They can navigate difficult conversations with empathy, and they build strong, collaborative relationships. Psychology calls this emotional intelligence. This skill is rooted in the crosstalk between the amygdala, the brain's emotional center, and the prefrontal cortex, the center for rational thought. They're not just naturally charismatic. They've trained their psychology to regulate impulse and build rapport strategically. 5. They practice strategic risk-taking. Successful people aren't reckless gamblers, but they are comfortable with calculated uncertainty. They will launch a product that isn't perfect to get market feedback. They will invest in a promising but unproven technology. Or they will take on a challenging new role that stretches their capabilities. Psychology frames this as high self-efficacy, the belief in one's ability to succeed in specific situations. This mindset allows them to see risk not as a threat of failure, but as an opportunity for data and growth. What looks like fearless courage is actually a well-developed psychological tolerance for ambiguity, backed by deep research and self-belief. 6. They leverage failure psychology. Where most people see an endpoint, successful people see a data point. When a project fails, they don't internalize it as a reflection of their worth. They analyze what went wrong, extract the lesson, and apply it to their next attempt. They view setbacks as a necessary part of the innovation and growth process. Psychology calls this resilience or grit. This psychological framing prevents the activation of a chronic stress response in the brain after a failure, allowing for rapid cognitive recovery and re-engagement. They're not immune to disappointment. They've simply trained their psychology to metabolize failure into fuel. 7. They master energy management. Successful people know that time is finite, but energy is renewable and far more valuable. They don't just manage their calendar. They strategically manage their physical, mental, and emotional energy. They protect their sleep, prioritize deep work during their peak cognitive hours, schedule time for rest and recovery, and eliminate low-impact activities that drain their focus. Psychology calls this metacognition, the awareness and understanding of one's own thought processes and energy levels. By optimizing their biology, they ensure their brain operates at its highest capacity for the most critical tasks. What appears as superhuman productivity is actually strategic, psychological, and biological management. These psychological patterns aren't luck or talent. Psychology shows successful people have simply trained their minds differently. They're not born special. They've trained their psychology to see opportunity where others see obstacles and to build systems for growth where others rely on chance. You can adopt these same psychology patterns and reprogram your thinking for success. What looks like luck is actually deliberate psychology, and what appears as effortless is actually strategic mental training. If you want to understand success psychology, achievement psychology, and how to train your brain for high performance, subscribe, because the next video reveals the specific psychology habits of billionaires and top performers.